It's Monday, March 2nd, so it's time for another monthly update video in which I'll talk about what went on in February, very short but packed month, and what we've got coming up in the month of March. So I always like to begin by highlighting three big things, and big thing number one that I think quite a few of you viewers have probably seen already is we launched the Wisdom for Life radio show last Friday. Ran for an hour. You can see the link to it below in the description if you click on See More. Big thing number two, my wife, Andy Shaka, and I have been invited to participate in some worldwide Stoic events, which is pretty cool. We got some planning going on. Looks like there's going to be one in June in London or somewhere around there. And then we've also been invited to present at Stoicon X Toronto right after the Stoicon conference, which we'll both be going to as well. So that's kind of another fun big thing on the horizon. And then big thing number three, which affects my video production to some degree down the line, is I have my classes for fall, at least at two of the institutions where I regularly teach. So I'll talk a little bit about that in the February section. Those are the three big things I wanted to sort of highlight. Now let's talk about what went on in February. February was a pretty packed month as far as events and teaching and all these other sorts of things. So I began the month with the fifth year of the quarterly series, Philosophers in the Midst of History, talking about Epicurus and the Epicurean tradition. The video for that is below, so you can watch that if you're interested, if you missed it. That's kind of a big deal. And then we continued on with another series, the monthly Worlds of Speculative Fiction series, this time concentrating on China Miéville. We had a great discussion about his work and straight into a lot of topics. Quite a few online events. I did my usual Ask Me Anything session. I managed to get in 2 philosophy pop-ups as well. And the half-hour Hegel, Q&A and discussion sessions, and of course the Wisdom for Life radio show. So that was kind of a big event. We also had some local meetups as well. The Stoic Fellowship meets monthly, and I was there for that. And then we had our MKE, that's Milwaukee, Sophia, the Society of Philosophers in America, meeting and discussed some interesting topics there. Teaching 2 of my classes that had not yet begun, actually began in February. One is at Carthage College, is my business ethics class that I've started teaching there fairly regularly. The other is an online class from Milwaukee Area Technical College, which is a 12-week version of what would normally be a 15-week class, so it starts a little bit later. I've been carrying out a lot of tutorial work and my usual philosophical counseling, some consulting regularly, and of course editing for Stoicism Today and doing quite a few of those things as well. And I'm working on some book projects with some colleagues and an article that with another colleague. We're waiting to hear whether the paper of that is going to be accepted or not. If it is, then we got to step up our production so that we're ready for the conference that it will be aired at this summer. Otherwise, we can proceed at a more leisurely pace, you might say. Podcast. So the Sadler's Lectures podcast, I was able to get quite a few episodes done and published and out to the general public. So I went through the 5 episodes that we had on Anselm's Proslogion, did some stuff on Heidegger's Introduction to Being and Time, and we're in the process of releasing episodes on Friedrich Nietzsche's On Truth and Lies in an Extramoral Sense. We're mostly through that. I'll actually be releasing one later today. Video work. I did manage to get 2 book reviews done, so I'm moving on that. I didn't get any half-hour Hegel stuff done, unfortunately. and I wasn't able to do the self-directed study video, but we have videos of each of the events, and I shot a ton of core concept video footage for my classes. That's where my priority had to be. So I released the last of the videos on Ayn Rand, released some videos on Tolstoy's What is Art, some videos on Peter Singer's Biological Basis of Ethics essay, and began releasing videos on John Rawls' Theory of Justice, all of which are for my Ethics for Artists and Designers course, but some of which I use in other courses as well. And Patreon supporters got to see much of that video footage early, because that's one of the perks that they enjoy. So, if you're interested in that, you might want to consider becoming a supporter. That's what went on in February. So what is coming up in March? We got a lot of events, so I'm going to run through them fairly methodically and try not to comment on any of them until I get to the end, and then I'll tell you a little bit more about them. So here's the reel. Tomorrow, on February 3rd, 6 p.m. here in Milwaukee at the Mitchell Street branch of the library, we have our monthly MKE Sophia meeting. We're going to be talking about philosophy and ethics and sports because it's March Madness. On the 11th at 5 p.m. online event, so Central Time, we have our Hegel Q&A and discussion session. You can video conference with me and ask your questions about Hegel or about other things related to German idealism, or we can just kind of shoot the breeze. 13th at 5 p.m., we have the second airing of the new Wisdom for Life radio show co-hosted by myself and Dan Hayes. Talk more about that in just a minute. Then on the 14th, 12 p.m., we'll have the AMA, Ask Me Anything session. Make sure you get there early because questions pile up and I don't always get to all of them. Later that afternoon, for Patreon supporters at a certain level, on the 14th, 2 p.m., philosophy chat, video conferencing with me. Ask whatever they want, and I'll engage with the questions that they bring up or topics or whatever they want to discuss. On the 26th at 6 p.m., here in Milwaukee at the Shorewood Public Library, we have the MKE Stoic Fellowship. That's a in-person group. You're welcome to come and join us, even if you don't know anything about Stoicism. I should mention as well, it looks like I skipped over one event, and that is the Worlds of Speculative Fiction. We are going to be looking at Stephen Donaldson on the 12th at 7 p.m., and that will be at the Brookfield Public Library. So we're looking at the Chronicles of Thomas Covenant, if you've ever read that epic fantasy cycle, which now has reached 10 books. And then jumping ahead back to the 27th, 5 p.m., next episode of Wisdom for Life. That'll be our third radio episode. And finally, finishing up on the 28th at 12 p.m., we'll have our video premiere of self-directed study in philosophy, focusing on how to study Augustine of Hippo. So a lot of stuff there. What do I want to highlight in that? Well, obviously the Wisdom for Life radio show. So that is on River West Radio, which broadcasts here in the Milwaukee area on a fairly small radius because it's a community radio station, and it broadcasts live over the internet everywhere in the world, so it's very easy to find that. There's also episodes are archived on their SoundCloud. I don't know if they go to Spotify or anything like that. That's a good question for you to ask River West Radio themselves, as opposed to asking me, because I don't have the answer. But you can listen to it quite easily on your phone, on other devices. However it is that you do that. So the whole idea behind the show, which has been a long time in the making, is about helping people understand philosophy in practical ways. So we're doing the stuff with some rigor, but we're also doing it for a popular audience. And each show we're going to talk about at least one philosophical practice. This time we did negative visualization. We'll see what we do next time. And we'll also deal with listener-provided questions about real-life issues. Not abstract things like, is philosophy compatible with theology? But more like, hey, I'm having this problem. What can philosophy say to help me with that? So that's the show. What else do I need to say about things? You're always welcome to come to the public events here in town. I video record many of them, but not all of them. And the online events, the only thing to remind you about is the times are all Central Time. And you can find all of this either on the Reason.io calendar, right? Go to reasonio.com, or on my Facebook page. I have all the events listed there as well. Got a lot of stuff lined up for this month, my usual roster of philosophical counseling and tutorials, picking up a few new clients here and there, teaching my classes, developing content for them, doing all the grading, all that kind of stuff. And, I'm also doing some consulting work, mostly in the ethics field, but also in a few other things having to do with argumentation with businesses. Podcast. So this month, it's going to be a lot of Nietzsche. We did an opinion poll on YouTube and on Twitter, and Nietzsche appears to, at least on YouTube, which had the most votes, blow everybody else out of the water. So after finishing up Truth and Lies in an Extra Moral Sense, I'm going to begin converting my lecture videos on Thus Spoke Zarathustra into podcast episodes that you can listen to and download. Then we're going to hit on the person who got number 2 in the poll, and that is Blaise Pascal. Some of the episodes or the videos that I did on his Pensées, I'll be converting those to podcast as well. And then if we have time at the end of the month, I'll start working on Epictetus's discourses. I've got a lot of material on that. And people often ask the question, so I'm going to address this right away. Are the podcast episodes different than the videos? And the answer is, in general, no, because that's what I'm taking them from. I'm using the core concept videos, but I'm boosting the sound quality and I'm taking out all of the ums, ahs, knows as best as I can. So that takes a bit of time, but produces a more listenable thing. So instead of just clicking on YouTube and listening from there, you can download the episodes and listen to them, on SoundCloud or iTunes or Google Play or Apple Music or whatever else it is that you're doing. So that's the podcast. Videos, of course, I'll be recording videos of the events, and that includes some of the online events. I'll be, the AMA session you can go back to. You can actually see in the chat what people are asking as I'm responding to it. And I hope I will get to some pop-ups as well. I'll think about some good topics for those. And so those videos will be available as well. I'm going to do more book reviews this month so I can start getting myself unburied from the stacks that are waiting for me. Half-hour Hegel videos, I've got some time allotted for working on those. Going to get that self-directed study video going so I can get that series back on track. And I got a lot of core concept material I need to either release or shoot. So I've got stuff waiting for you on Rawls, on John Stuart Mill's On Liberty, but I also need to shoot I need to shoot some more material on John Stuart Mill's On Liberty as well, but I also need to shoot some stuff on Mary Wollstonecraft's Vindication of the Rights of Women, on Nell Nodding's work on care ethics, and probably, if I can get to it, some stuff on various writings of Marx, because as we're moving into our ethics classes, we're going to be looking at race, class, gender issues. So I need to have some useful videos for that, and that's what I'll be working on. So a lot of stuff going on here. Again, you might want to tune into the radio show. That's probably the biggest news of the month, Wisdom for Life. Fridays, every other Friday, rather, 5 to 6 p.m. Central Time, streaming here in the Milwaukee area, but also streaming everywhere else. And if you missed the episode, you can go back to it later on and listen to it. So, hope all of you have a good month, and I'm going to hopefully get all this stuff done that I've got lined up. And maybe I'll see some of you at the online or face-to-face events.